We also have the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry, Joan Fubbs, and the chairman of the Finance Committee in the National Council of Provinces, Charles de Beer. Thank you for joining us this morning. Without any further ado then, I would like to call on Stephen Kossef to make some introductory remarks. Stephen, over to you.
He's taller than me. I think if I can just start on behalf of Investec, welcoming Minister Radebe, Minister Mkhize, and Minister Pandor, and all other honourable guests, including representatives. I can see the TG's just arrived. Thank God, TG, you are just in time. So all international representatives and all other business representatives. Investec is delighted to host this breakfast. I'm just going to say a bit more than a few words. They said I've got 15 minutes, so hope I'm not too long. What I want to talk about is clearly what is very much on the agenda in our society, and that is growth and transformation. So we do find ourselves at a critical juncture as a society. While we may dream of a better future for all, we're a long way from the country that we aspire to be. I think despite democratic freedom and the social progress achieved since 1994, economically we have to recognize that we still remain one of the most unequal societies in the world, with 28% formal unemployment, 36% if you use the wider definition, and worse, 63% of our youth are unemployed. We all understand that this is a ticking time bomb, and that we have to urgently diffuse. At the same time, it is very important for us to root out corruption and inefficiency. I think when the NDP was formulated, I think it was in 2012, it was, or maybe a year before that, it was approved. There were lots of very strong things in the NDP. The thing that appealed to me the most was the building of a capable state. I think we all recognize that without a capable state, it's going to be very difficult for us to achieve our growth aspirations. And I think I've heard quite a lot at this conference from listening to the media, because it's my first actual day here, that the NDP is something that is coming back on the agenda, and it is very important. I know we got Minister Radebe here. He's charged with executing it. It is very important that this NDP starts getting some form of momentum. I think, people's sense of hopelessness and unfairness of the situation and their frustrations at what they may perceive to be broken promises are boiling over, as shown with continuous service delivery protests around our country. I think many of us feel, to some extent, despondent as we connect the dots of leaked emails, evidence of corruption, and attacks on our critical democratic institutions and the Constitution, which we cannot watch our country to continue to falter. This is not government's problem alone. And I think it's very important that we recognize that this is a societal problem, and that one that business too has an important role in addressing. I think it's very important for us as business to find common ground with government and Labour, because we have a hell of a lot to do, and there's no more time to waste. I think government needs to see business as very much part of the solution. Economy cannot grow without a strong private sector or pro-business government policies. I think you're not going to be able to transform effectively without a growth economy. I know many of you sitting here will have heard me say this many times before, but I clearly worry when business is seen as a scapegoat for all society's ills, particularly when slogans like white monopoly capital, fake news, and alternate narratives are used as a ruse, a distraction to enable rent-seeking and looting. Business is not the enemy. It is key to creating jobs and enabling transformation. It is for this reason that business, labour and government need to partner to create the right kind of growth that achieves the desired outcomes. Business Unity South Africa has recently issued a document which outlines where some of us believe we need to get to as a society, and that is to create a deracialized, vibrant, diverse and globally competitive economy that enables all South Africans, and I emphasize the word all, to have the opportunity to participate in the economy and earn a sustainable livelihood. Some of us would call this inclusive growth. Others prefer the term radical economic transformation, whichever term you choose to use. And I said to the TG the other day, I will get over myself on the word radical economic transformation, because I've never liked the word radical, because they mean different things to different people. Ultimately, the task is to ensure accelerated, and I use the word accelerated because just to have inclusive growth limping along is no good, that one that supports both transformation and job creation. And that's what is needed to uplift the majority of our population. I think South Africa has achieved quite a lot since the beginnings of democracy. I think we do have a strong and vibrant democracy, a free media, disciplined macroeconomic policy, an independent judiciary, and a central bank which has done an admirable job for keeping inflation in check. I think many people do not understand the consequences of a loose monetary policy that ends up with rapid inflation. And there are many countries on our continent or other continents where inflation has got out of hand. If you take Venezuela as a big case in point, and I'll come back to them in a moment. I think our institutions need to be protected. They are our country's immune system, crucial in fighting the self-replicating virus of corruption, poor governance and ineptitude. I think it was not long ago that South Africa celebrated the creation of the new middle class. Black African people's jobs increased from 5 million in 1994 to 12 million in 2015. The number of black professionals grew 176% since 2000, and managers grew 191%. I know this is not enough, because management and professionals do not reflect the racial demographics of our society, but it is a move. It was a strong move in the right direction. We recognize that there's still far too many poor people, and that millions have been able to aspire for a lot more. I think by 2014, 70% of our university population is black African, and another 12% colored and Indian. It's very different to the days when I was at university, where there were no black Africans in my class or at our university that I can recall. There has been progress, and the negative narrative should not be allowed to stall the progress achieved thus far. I think what is very important going forward is education, skills development, and competitiveness. I think together we need to address the structural impediments that cap our growth levels. I think these include promoting competition, improving education quality, providing practical vocational skills. There's no point in training people for jobs that don't exist. You've got to train people for jobs that do exist. I think very importantly, if you think about 25 million coding jobs that are coming out of India to Africa, we as a society need to have the ability to absorb some of those coding jobs. If we can just get 2 million of them, we can reduce youth unemployment by about 2/3. I think we also cannot be oblivious to the fourth industrial revolution, where innovations in robotics and artificial intelligence will fundamentally change the workplace. We must equip our young people to compete in this global economy to avoid compounding economic exclusion in the future. Don't think this is only a worry for mining and factory workers. Professions are also already being affected. I'm an accountant. A lot of the work accountants historically did has been taken over by computers and robots. So I think there are a number of areas that we as a society need to focus. And I think services is a very big area. Tourism, both education tourism and healthcare tourism. If you think about a country like Australia, its second biggest export is education tourism. If you look at South Africa, we are starting to lose head offices to Kenya and Morocco. Although Sandton is still a head office center for Africa, it's very important for us as a society to actually capture as many as possible of the international head offices as we can. because that ultimately creates jobs, it creates GDP, it creates all sorts of things. And then we also need to speed up the creation of special export zones so that we have an ability to absorb low-skilled workers. I think as part of the CEO initiative, I spend a significant amount of my time thinking about these issues and working on initiatives together with government. I think the work stream I co-lead with Colin Coleman is finalising the plan for youth employment service, where hopefully we will be able to create 1 million internships over a 3-year period. We are still finalising our packages with government that we can start marketing to corporates, and hopefully we want to get this up and running with a pilot test by the 1st of October. If we can get this moving, I think it makes a big difference to how we look into the future and how we give youth hope. It is very important for us to give youth hope. I think if you look at Jim Collins's book, Good to Great, he uses the analogy of getting a flywheel turning. A flywheel is stuck and it's very hard to get moving. But once you get it moving, it starts building up its own momentum. That is what we need to do for our economy, is start building momentum. We are stuck. When you're in a hole, we had a very good professor of organizational behavior from London, from INSEAD, used to say, when you're in a hole, you don't keep digging, you actually climb out. I think one of the big challenges for our broader society is people tend to choose populism. And I think that is a big mistake for us. There are challenges we all understand that there are challenges with capitalism, and that capitalism in its purest form does not deliver to all the people. But it is a system that is fared best, and there are modifications that one can do to capitalism that make sure that it delivers the appropriate outcomes. Populist policies are clearly not the way to go. While they may be politically expedient in the short term, they have disastrous long-term repercussions. It would be a tragedy if we would blindly follow outdated and failed ideologies. On his recent visit to South Africa, the former Venezuelan cabinet minister and prominent Harvard economist Ricardo Hausmann cautioned South Africa against making an historic mistake by following the example of his home country. If you look at Venezuela today, you know it's had inflation of 2,000%. It's got the biggest oil reserves in the world. Its people are starving. It can't get medical supplies. Many of its talented people leave the country to go and work somewhere else. There are medical doctors working in Miami cleaning toilets because they can't yet practice. This is what can happen to your society if you go down the wrong road. And I think that is something that we have to be very careful of. Redistribution at the expense of growth always results in benefiting a few at the expense of the many. And it is poor people who end up suffering as the economy spirals downwards. South Africa can and must do a lot better than this. Economist Brian Cantor, in his recent book, and I'm dishing this book out, Get South Africa Growing, makes a compelling case for better and less intrusive government. I urge you to read this. He points to numerous global studies which have found that countries with more economic freedom exhibit higher investment, economic growth, and income. I think there are many examples of this. You can look at Chile and Peru versus Venezuela. You can look at South Korea versus North Korea. You can even look at a country like Mauritius, which has actually achieved significant growth over the last 10, 20 years. And there are many other countries that have adopted, a freer market approach with less intrusiveness. I think Brian Kent is not the only one to highlight South Africa's current model, which concentrates too much economic power in the hands of the state, is susceptible to corruption, and allows for inefficiencies and poor service. I think what is required is good management and good business skills. I think Telkom is a very good example of a public-private partnership. And why I say, even though it's a listed company, why I say it's a public-private partnership, 40% of its shares are owned by the government, 7.5% are owned by the PRC. It used to be 10. There's been no reliance for state funding. Its performance has been pretty good. Its share price has gone up a lot. In fact, in this year, it rewarded its shareholders with a 56% higher dividend. If we compare that to some of our state-owned enterprises, SAA, Denel, SABC, and potentially Eskom, I think you really have to think very carefully about the current model that we're using. I think there were very good economists, Indian economists that are at Columbia University, Jagdish Bhagwati and Arvind Pangayera, in their book Why Growth Matters, also makes the case for the free market, highlighting that it is the only proven strategy in a democracy that can uplift millions of people out of poverty. I think India is a very good case in point. For 50 years, it battled with its growth rate. It never got above 4%. Since 1991, where they opened up the system and they continued to open up the system, they have been growing between, probably, apart from the financial crisis, 7 to 8%. I think that using that methodology, they've uplifted hundreds of millions of people from poverty. So it is disappointing that we have a flip-flop on policies. I think certain regulations have been chaotic. I think we've seen the more recent mining charter, which we believe as business was crazy. It was not properly processed, and it ultimately puts off investors. I think we saw the impact on the rand when the public protector mentioned fiddling with the mandate of the Reserve Bank, and the mining charter itself wiped 50 billion rand off the JSE mining shares. All of this has consequences like the credit rating downgrades. I think debt becomes more expensive. Companies that are more capital intensive stop spending or delay investment decisions, ultimately with a big effect on jobs. And then on top of that, if you look at the PRC, which manages the government pension fund, it is the biggest investor in the shares on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Any of these policies that affect the value of the shares ultimately affect its ability to support pensions. So I think turning around investor confidence is critical for South Africa, including confidence of our society in general. Our economy is completely integrated with the global economy and increasingly reliant on foreign capital. Foreign investors own 35% of our rand-denominated bonds. All we need in life is a rating downgrade of our domestic currency rating, and that has an ultimate effect of pushing up interest rates and making government's fiscal position much worse. I think in light of this current malaise, there's an urgent need for a new social pact that transcends ideologies and backgrounds. We need to build trust. These kinds of meetings, these kinds of breakfasts, and all the engagements, this is my 10th engagement in 3 weeks with various forms of government on these very, very issues. It's very important for us to engage. It's very important for us to hear both sides of the argument. It's very important for us to pour water over populist rhetoric. We must unite under a common goal and tackle the problem with innovative thinking and bold and pragmatic leadership. We must agree. And I was very happy with the TG the other day, because the TG, in an engagement with the financial sector, the meeting before was talking about everything is the fault of lack of transformation, but then he brought in two other key factors. One was growth, and one was creation of jobs. So you need to do all three. If we do not do all three, we'll never be able to effectively transform our society. So it is important that our vision for South Africa allows us to innovate, build new skills to meet current and future challenges. I think the NDP is a framework that does provide us a framework that we need to build on. Together, under the banner of a common purpose, there are no limits to what South Africa can achieve. In doing so, we can live up to the dreams initially sketched by Madiba and achieve the impossible. As Madiba stated, the advent of our South Africa's democracy, it always seems impossible until it's done. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. And again, thank you for allowing us to host this breakfast.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'd also just like to recognize the representative of the Embassy of Brazil that has joined us, and of course, Treasurer General of the ANC, Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Thank you very much for being with us again this morning. We are going to go live onto SABC at 8 o'clock sharp, so please just bear in mind when you're having breakfast to try and keep the clickety-clackety down as low as possible. Right, breakfast will now be served.
underscoring the importance that the National Development Plan would have in the future of our country. And so, opening words of that Vision 2030 reads, "We, the people of South Africa, have journeyed for since the long lines of our first democratic election on 27 April 1994, when we elected a government for us all. Now, in 2030, we live in a country which have remade. We've created a home where everybody feels free yet bounded to others, where everyone embraces their full potential. We are proud to be a community that cares." The NDP was indeed a product of thousands of inputs and perspective of all South Africans, trying to reimagine the future. It is a plan for a better future, a future in which no person lives in poverty, where no one goes hungry, where there is work for all, a nation united in the vision of our Constitution. In crafting that plan, the National Planning Commission had approached thousands upon thousands of South Africans across the country, with a special effort made to listen to the South African youth and women, and as a result, there were clear messages from citizens. While South Africans are concerned about the problems of joblessness, education, and faltering services, among others, they are proud to be South African, and they want to see it succeed and be part of that process of making South Africa a better place. So today, on the 4th of July 2017, the National Planning Commission and the ANC government continues to view the NDP and its implementation as critical for the future of our country, to eliminate poverty, unemployment, and inequality that is still a blight on our collective consciousness. The NDP, on its part, proposes a holistic, coordinated, and collaborative approach to addressing our country's problems in the here and now, with progress across several fronts simultaneously over a long period of time. Importantly, it is about the long-term 2030. In this regard, the NDP's goals rest on 6 critical pillars. It is to unite all South Africans around a common program to fight poverty and inequality and promote social cohesion, to have South Africans as active citizens in their community and in the development of their own country, build a growing and inclusive economy with higher investment, better skills, rising savings, and greater levels of competitiveness, building capabilities of our people as well as the state, promoting a developmental state capable of correcting historical inequalities and creating opportunities for more of our people, while professional, competent, and responsive to the needs of all citizens. Ensuring South African leaders put aside narrow sectarian interest in favor of the national interest and putting our country first. However, we must caution too that we must be aware of the omnipresent global trends and their impact on our domestic efforts and South African development imperatives. Ignoring the nexus between global and domestic could leave us to face the possibility of being left behind. Again, will confine the future generations to poverty and hopelessness. This is a future we have agreed that is too ghastly to contemplate. The NDP was about appreciating a desired future in 2030 and crafting a way to get us there in a better shape. A favorite question at this ANC policy conference and just generally, is how is the state, business, labor, and all other social partners going to ensure better implementation of our National Development Plan. It is my submission that the implementation of the NDP is happening and will yield greater successes if we share that collective responsibility of holding one another accountable. As the National Planning Commission, we will play our part. As a government, we are playing our part, but we need more and much more. And so, the NDP is an opportunity for all of us to remake our future, to re-energize our people, and to strive for that future that was worthy of our proud history that was built on the vision of our magnificent Constitution. The NDP in 2017 remains a clarion call to action, to unite a country and to serve to unleash the energies of all of South Africa's people and to build a better future. It is our future. We have to make it work. No one is going to do it for us. Moreover, this NDP offers a long-term perspective. It defines a desired destination and identifies the roles different sectors of our society that need to play in reaching that goal. Accordingly, the NDP asserts that South Africa can realize those goals by drawing on the energies of its people, growing an inclusive economy, building capabilities, enhancing the capacity of the state, and promoting leadership and partnership throughout South African society. It is therefore vital that as a governing party, we have continuous engagement with the business sector, with labor and all our social partners to share insights, best practice, and what works in respect of the strategies to transform our country's economic landscape. It is our collective interest to have a vibrant and inclusive economy, and this cannot be achieved without involvement of all our stakeholders. Of course, we are exceedingly pleased to note that the NDP, our Vision 2030, has served as a bedrock for most of the deliberations and discussions here at this ANC policy conference under the rubric, the ANC of Oliver Tambo, let us deepen unity. And so it should be. Honored guest, you will agree that all of these elements are very crucial if we are to make a difference in the lives of our people. We need to work with renewed vigor in order to expedite transformation and inclusive growth in the South African economy. We consider the defeat of these challenges, poverty, unemployment, inequality, as critical building blocks towards achieving a truly united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. This, we set ourselves a clear pathway along the road to 2030, the future that we all want. The clearest statement of intent is this: South Africa must be a better place to live in by 2030 compared to what it is today. Therefore, I wish to underline the metaphor, a long and arduous journey together. It was never going to be a quick and easy fix. Neither was it meant to be a plan for government alone. Let me restate, we need to put in place the markers now and for the long run as a journey towards 2030. Allow me to bring assurances to you here at this breakfast today. There should be no doubt in everyone's mind, least of all here who are gathered today. The ANC government is fully committed to the implementation of the National Development Plan. A fake narrative has tried to surface in recent times, It is that the ANC government is not serious about implementing the NDP, or that the NDP just a hollow political rhetoric. Nothing can be further from the truth. My report on the progress on the implementation of the NDP on Friday must bury those who wish to clutch at the straws. We must always be guided by obtaining truth from facts. Allow me then just a moment to pause and to recognize one who was born in the Eastern Cape in Bizana. Had he lived in the 27th of April 2017, we have all danced to celebrate the centenary of a teacher, lawyer, national chairperson, and the president of the ANC, Oliver Reginald Tambo. Tambo's words ring loud and clear in our ears, which he uttered almost 30 years ago at the University of Georgetown in 1987. This is what he said: "Using the power you derive from the discovery of the truth about racism in South Africa, you will help us to remake our part of the world into a corner of the globe on which all of humanity can be proud." We have our marching orders from that clarion call. It is to remake our part of the world into a corner of the globe on which all of humanity can be proud. Honored guest, we have proven over the last while that where there is trust and confidence, rating agencies tend to give us the benefit of their goodwill. We should have no doubt that part of the task at hand is about forging an entirely new social compact. Both leadership in government, in our governing party, the ANC, have openly committed to improving business and investor confidence in South Africa. The importance of this should not be underestimated. For us, this is particularly important because the country, as the NDP, our Vision 2030 argues, requires strong economic growth to make inroads and deal decisively with poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The living standards of our citizens cannot improve in the absence of a strong and inclusive economic growth. Additionally, our economy needs to grow faster in order to increase revenue, in order for us to continue to meet our pro-poor policy stance and thus meeting our growing social welfare expenditure. We must not underestimate our own abilities to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. If these necessary steps are taken, we will see the return of that magical twin of economic ingredients: trust and confidence. This will encourage the private sector to start investing the estimated 600 billion rand in funds they are sitting on. Private investment in the economy is now down to 19%. Ideally, it should be around 30%. When we reverse this trend and get the private sector investing, it develops its own momentum. Investment creates greater confidence, which generates more investment, a virtuous cycle of development, growth, and expanding economic opportunities. The NDP, the government, has to play a leading role, obviously, in the implementation of the NDP, also relying on the strategic levers at its disposal. To this end, we require all hands on deck, now more than ever before. In this regard, our government has acted. It has ensured that the goals and targets of the NDP are integrated in our first 5-year program, the medium-term strategic framework for the electoral period of 2014 to 2019 as the first 5-year implementation program of the NDP. I want to ask and reflect on what more the rest of society has done can do or is doing to advance the implementation of our National Development Plan? How best do we join hands again to advance our national interest? In the absence of tangible evidence, how will we know what is being done by people like yourselves and others in pursuance of the goals of the NDP? How will we measure the success, and how will we report on this and in the future? I have been thinking of collaborative NDP monitor that measures what all of us are doing in all sectors of South African society. Perhaps I should ask Investec and other business leaders to help in this. So this is an invitation to you today, and even those who are not here today, come, let us all join hands again to make South Africa rise up once again. So this is an invitation to all of you, and even those who are not here today. The NDP remains a transparent presentation to all South African citizens to work with government of actions and also to be undertaken so that we can be able to see the outcomes that we seek of what has been measured towards realizing all those desired results. All of this is part of institutionalizing proper evidence-based and planning across the whole of our government, and also to lay the basis for effective implementation, but more importantly, accountability for all government departments and society in general. Honored guests, it is now 23 years since we attained freedom and democracy, but our long walk to freedom is far from over. For as long as poverty remains endemic, for as long as large swathes of our youth remain unemployed, for as long as the levels of inequality remain among the highest in the world, our people will not be free. The face of poverty remains black, in particular African. The call for radical socio-economic transformation, Stephen Kosef, seeks to address this fundamental issue. It is a response to the needs of our people, and it is a national imperative, no more, no less. Put simply, it is about giving effect to the demand of the Freedom Charter that the people shall share in the country's wealth. Among the top priorities we are looking at are ways of expediting transformation, amongst others, in the following areas: ownership of the economy by black people, mining and beneficiation, agriculture and land redistribution, manufacturing, support for small and medium enterprises. In conclusion, I want to say that we are on course and eminently aware that the ANC, that the NDP sits at the cusp of all of our solutions. What is now required is more openness, more public engagement, and more active and inclusive participation by all stakeholders in South Africa. This, after all, our NDP belongs to all of us. Let us agree to talk to a renewed set of milestones to ensure greater and more effective implementation of the NDP. We must attend with renewed sense of agency to accelerating the implementation of the NDP, paying due attention to the role of the private sector, organized labor, and other actors in society. In this regard, we call on society as a whole to join hands and actively engage and participate in the quest to implement the future that we want to see in our country. We all espouse a better, a more prosperous and economically viable South Africa. A stable economy is a bedrock of a strong nation. The business sector is one of the key pillars of economic growth and development. You have a critical role to play in our journey towards the realization of the dream of a South Africa that is free of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. If business fails, South Africa fails. When business in South Africa thrives, South Africa will also thrive. Let us put our shoulders to the wheel again as we strive for a better and more prosperous South Africa. It is our future. Make it work. I return to the NDP Vision 2030 as I close. Our new story is open-ended with temporary destinations only for new paths to open up once more. It is a story of unfolding learning. Even when we flounder, we remain hopeful. In this story, we always arrive and depart. We have come some way. The journey has just begun. The destination is 2030. Ngiyabonga. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Khadebe, for that really reassuring message, especially as regards the NDP. I would also like to recognize the representative of the European Union that has also joined us. We are going to, in a moment, call the TG to address us, to share his thoughts with us. But in the meantime, if I could just ask you to start throwing your ideas around in your head, your thoughts in your head, so that when we move to the Q&A session to the Minister and to the TG, that is in place. Treasurer General, please.
Thank you very much, Daryl, sorry. The convener of the Progressive Business Forum, Minister Jeff Khadebe, Minister in the Presidency, the ministers present, Minister Naledi Pandor for Science and Technology, Minister for Home Affairs, Professor Hlengo Mkize and your partner, Kabazela, the Deputy Minister, Hart Wosthuizen, and the Chair of the Portfolio, John Fabs, President of the Black Business Council, the sponsor, Investec, so Steve Kosef and your family, Investec family here, the leaders in business in various sectors, ladies and gentlemen, members of the diplomatic corps and the media, thank you very much for joining us in this very important breakfast session. This session, we convene to create an interaction between business and policymakers, and therefore, when it's time for questions and comments, please feel free to direct even to the other ministers who have not given a presentation. They are ready to engage. They are, yes. You notice those of you who were here yesterday, we brought them up from the podium to come and answer the questions in the front. Now, I've found a trick as Treasurer General. You don't answer the questions. The ministers are the ones who know what's happening in government, so that's very helpful. But thank you very much, comrades, for the support. Comrade Jeff Khadebe has just given a whole outline of the National Development Plan, and I must say he did exactly the same, probably in more detail for this conference. And I want to remind members here that the ANC in 2012 actually adopted the NDP as its own document, meaning that it's not just seen as a government document, but that the African National Congress has the responsibility to see to it that it's being implemented and understood, not only by its own members, but by society in general. And so this presentation today, I hope it assists you to know that the National Development Plan is alive, and we are all, as government and the ANC, working within that framework. And I think it's important also to emphasize the point the minister has made, that it's not a plan for government, it's a plan for South Africans. It covers the entire spectrum of activities, what should be happening in the economy, the conduct of the private sector, labor, and so on. it deals with the issues of civil society, it deals with issues of government, as it were. And so, as we are dealing with the issue now of economic transformation, it is in the context of making sure that this NDP is implemented. Radical economic transformation must ensure what the minister has indicated, that we reduce unemployment significantly by 2030, create more jobs, about 3 million jobs. That's what NDP is about. And when we looked at it, we thought the way to do it is to actually embark on radical economic transformation. I think it's important also to see that there has been a lot of engagement with private sector. There's now a corporate understanding of this radical economic transformation. As you have heard Mr. Steve Kosef, he says he can now live with the word radical economic transformation. So we've got new participants in this program. And we made the point, we had quite a hectic discussion between ourselves and the banks and the asset management management companies, that don't worry about the term because it doesn't come from you. It comes from those who feel squeezed by the economy that's not transforming. And the issue is they are giving us an instruction to say, radically change, radically transform this economy. You must change the structure so that we're all accommodated. You must change the pattern of ownership so that black people are not seen as risk. You must change this ownership pattern, because over 20 years, there are more entrepreneurs who have had experience, who can run major corporations, and they've proven that they can do it. So now they need to be given the opportunity to be financed, to stand alone. The big business must understand that you have to change and accommodate. And that point, I think, has also come out quite strongly, as the minister was indicating. When we had this transition from apartheid to democracy, the major reason why it was important to deal with the issue of reconciliation, it was to give South Africans a chance to understand that they are one people and that we belong to the same country, the country belongs to all of us, and that each and every one of us has got a responsibility in building this democracy. You're not going to build a democracy of poor people, of unemployed people, and expect them to think that the democracy is delivering the same thing to them as it's doing to those who are prosperous. We want a prosperous South Africa for all South Africans. And the issue, therefore, is business, particularly the financial services sector, has to come to terms with the fact that their pattern of investment needs to be transformed. And that is the most important issue. And I must say that one of the important core programs of government in the implementation of the NDP has been infrastructure build program. It's a 3 trillion rand program over the next up to 2030. And we actually had a lot of discussion. Minister Patel was standing here 2 days ago explaining how, in preparation for that implementation, it was important to start confronting the construction sector and say, you have to transform, otherwise government can't entrust 3 trillion rand to an untransformed industry. And that, of course, it happened. Now, we've got interesting examples here. I'm not sure if I can make them stand up because they are an example of this transformation we're talking about. Let me just take advantage of my age and say that I'll ask Mr. Mike Wiley and Thandi Ndlovu to stand up. These two were amongst those who actually were helpful in the whole process of steering the issue of transformation within this industry. Mark Wiley is chairman of WHO. He was in the forefront of all those companies that stood accused, the major white construction companies that had to sit down and say, we believe we can make a contribution in transforming this industry, and brought about what was called the voluntary rebuild program. And Thandi, on this side, led the BBC side. the Black Business Council side, as they led with the negotiations. It took a long process, but what Minister Ibrahim was talking about is a situation where there was Basil Reid there sitting. They were already there negotiating, the sale of shares so that there's 50% ownership by black shareholders. There are many others who are going through those negotiations. The other provision required that if a company didn't do so, it would then have to take up a number of black companies and ensure that they are upgraded from a particular grade to a higher grade, and their turnover must constitute not less than 25% of the turnover of the main company. And they are already involved in that partnership already at this point. It's a number of companies that are part of this consortium. And it's important to say that it can work. It can be done. So in all of these big companies, something is happening. That's why I made the point, and I want to repeat this, because Black Business Council asked the question, not all these companies are willing to participate in this transformation program. What do we do with them? In my view, they can't bask in the glory of those who are prepared to transform, and yet they are not transforming. Something must happen to them. I'll leave it there. But the point which we want to make is that we can work out a program of transforming and move on to implement this, this National Development Plan. Now, that's the one aspect. The other aspect, which should also be interesting, now, Mr. Steve Kosef says he has had 10 meetings with various forms of government or its representatives discussing these issues of the economy. What he doesn't say is that 3 of those were with the African National Congress, and particularly led by myself and the chair of the Economic Transformation Committee. Amongst us here are some of the members of the team of a number of associations, largely of black professionals and some of those bankers and fund managers, and we have put the issue on the table that there are 3 things that this economy needs. One, we need to ensure that there's growth so that the economy moves up and deals with the problems of poverty in general. The other one is that it needs to create jobs. The other one, it needs to transform so that it becomes inclusive. Those 3 issues are what we're discussing in our commissions. There's been a whole elaborate review of all the policy decisions we've taken since 2012, and the question is how much of that has been implemented, and what are the gaps, what are the problems, and what do we need to do now moving forward. And I must say, I heard Mr. Kosef saying that we must not be populist. I agree with you. The temptation with populism is that sometimes populism pays quicker, and the problem with it is that by the time you discover its flaws, it's outside the lifetime of those who are populist. And so you have a problem dealing with a situation where there are real issues which the people who are supposed to resolve them are taking too much time trying to resolve them. Then you start getting into a problem of populist statements and slogans. What we are asking here is that we need to get ourselves involved in the discussion that are taking us to the implementation of this NDP, and in particular, in the transformation of the economy, the financial services sector must lead the way. Minister Khate was talking about 600, some say 700 billion. That has not been invested in our economy. The issue is we need to ask ourselves the question, what will it take for private sector to go and invest that money in our economy? That is going to be what we need to discuss and come with a solution. I've heard, of course, the concern about the issue of policy, certainty, the issues of confidence. You're talking to the right leaders here because those are the ones who are responsible for making sure that that issue happens. But I think the call that comes from government is clear, from Minister Khadebe, that government wants to work with business, but we need to find a way, how do we make sure that it ultimately delivers not only confidence, but the growth, the job creation, and the transformation that we require. So everybody needs to cooperate here. And that's the point that we are wanting to make. And having said so, we want to therefore say that we welcome all your suggestions and ideas in terms of what can be done. Now, government has got two ways. On the one side, we can sit and have a discussion and agree on what we can do voluntarily, which helps much better. On the other side, of course, government has got a particular responsibility of formulation of policies and a legislative framework that will guide in terms of what needs to be done, both in terms of incentives and penalties for those who don't want to move forward. And so the question is, what is the best formula for us to take this matter forward? I think that discussion is important and urgent for all of us here. Just for the matter of interest to Minister Khadebe, some business did get involved and very interested in the issue of implementation of the NDP. I'm sure Minister will recall that McKinsey International sponsored a study and actually found that it is possible to create the 3 million jobs as the NDP says. They identified a number of sectors, and I think that's work that's being processed inside government, because Minister Davis is fully aware of that. So we are then saying that it is possible within the framework of this NDP to bring more of nation building and social cohesion amongst ourselves, stable democracy, and fight crime and make sure that there are harmonious communities. We can entrench non-racialism, make sure South Africans accept each other as members of one nation and so on, and then build this economy. This economy is basically about this creation of this vision we have. When we say we want to create a united, non-racial, non-sexist, free, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. Now, the first few adjectives seem to be on their course. The last one of prosperous South Africa is the one that's outstanding. The people out there must be able to deal with the problem. When the young people have been have never worked, and since they left school for 5, 10, 15 years, it's a crisis. It's something that we have to deal with. The fact that at the moment the unemployment is at the level of 27.7 is something that means we need to act urgently. The fact that we have got a huge youth population that needs to be accommodated in the economy means that we need to ensure that that energy is harnessed for the growth of our economy, not for the destruction of our country and our democracy. It's important, therefore, that those who have means must understand that it's about the resources of our country being shared amongst all those who live in it. And therefore, this NDP is about building a better South Africa. That's why we thought you need to get this outline coming from Minister Jeff Khadebe. In the context here of radical economic transformation, people mustn't think that now there's radical economic transformation, there's NDP, this side, it's all inside. It's all inside, and it's all about going from here to say, insofar as the economy is concerned, what do we do so that this national development plan can work? And that's the discussion today. So I hope that you'll be able to give us your suggestions, your views. We still got one more day of our commission, so we can still share some of your views in the commission. And of course, we look forward to a discussion with you. And to thank Investec for your sponsorship. And I want to say as well that the engagements that we have had has been very promising. One of the things we're looking forward to is an open dialogue, kind of CODESA type discussion. It won't be just there, it won't be there as much as that, but the point is that unless you bring in those who were marginalized and those who have been advantaged in running the economy together and make everybody understand where it pinches, it becomes difficult for us to understand what role we need to be playing to build this economy. So in the next few weeks, we're hoping that we'll have this all-in kind of summit, particularly the financial services sector, because that's where, for me, that's where the cat is buried. That amount of money is what needs to be mobilized to create black industrialists, build small business, and ensure that we can open up the economy, create new owners, new corporations that will be run, owned, and managed by black people who have developed lots of expertise in the past 23 years. That, for me, is one of the things that we must focus on. So, ladies and gentlemen, Please enjoy this morning, and thank you to Investec for your sponsorship for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mkhize. So this is where the conversation really starts. Please give me an indication as to who would like to give it a first bash. There we are. If I can ask you to please keep the questions as short and as succinct as possible so we can allow many people to participate. I've noticed the two hands at the back, but I'm going to start right here in the front. Two hands was from one man, that is.
I'm Peter Strydom from a company, Pygrow. In terms of a national development plan, I think it's not an idea anymore, it's a reality. But as we all know, to get to end results, you need to monitor. I know the minister just touched a little bit in terms of the plans, in terms of monitoring the progress on the national development plan. So I would like the minister maybe just to expand a little bit on that. And then from industry side, we're also ready to support government in terms of the monitoring of that plan.
Thank you. If we can just move it to this table over here.
Good morning. My name is Carsten Simpelo. I'm from a company, Pumzile Engineering Services in Polokwane. We are a distributor and we do maintenance and service of earth-moving equipment. Minister and TG, I know that this is not an elective conference, but a policy conference, and that we still have 2 more days to go. With that in mind, our business, and I dare say the NDP, relies entirely on a strong ANC government for success and survival. In your assessment, what are the chances that the ANC will avoid a debilitating and divisive succession debate in order to avoid a disastrous 2019? Because that will be catastrophic for our business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go to the table right behind this one.
Thank you very much. My name is Russell. You know, I just want to ask this. What I've noticed in our country, there's basically a culture of receiving goods. We are very much comfortable in getting imports into our country, which is a bit of a problem to me. The reason I'm saying that is we've got Eskom getting transformers from China. And you find that 80% of that product is coming from them and creating employment in China, when our own people are suffering in our country. Now, what I want to ask is, does government have any strategic plan, you know, to cap against importing of goods that are potentially available in our country? One example is that there is a plant in Heidelberg for manufacturing of transformers. The name of the company is called Radiant Transformers. That company has been here for more than 10 years. You go to them and ask them, do you do business with government? They have never been recognized. That is the skill that we have in the country. I think radicalism also creates a little bit of selfishness in approach, where people are supposed to take a decision to say, we want to do these things and we want to do it locally. One other thing that is there is products like, you know, fiber cables. You find people getting tenders to supply fiber cables. Why are we not doing it in our country? Currently, there are issues of, you know, smuggling, rhino horns, and all these other things. It means there's a market for those things outside the country. Why don't we then pass a bill where we say let's have these things done locally, then it gets manufactured in this country, they get it that side as a final product. That should have worked for our country. Other than for us to take our horns, load them in containers, go that side, then they come back from that side, we buy them very, very heavily. Okay. This is things that we definitely have to look into. Then the second one is, we're talking about industrialization. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard of our organization or our government engaging or inviting engineers in our country, either black or white. These people have skills that can help our country. Automatically, government need engineering consultancy for it to be able to prosper in this particular radicalism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll move to this table in the middle. No, gentleman there, yes, and then we'll come to this one in the front, and then we'll close this round.
All right.
For second round.
The name Tabora Mule. Mine is simple. What the PBF and this breakfast has done, I've attended all of them, in me, is to rise up the energy that has never been there. I'm going to make a commitment today that within a year, actually by the end of this year, I want to see the implementation of an idea that I had since 2015. And that answers hashtag fees must fall. It says hashtag each one teach one. Because of now, what this says is that it will address and make 12.5 million beneficiaries out of it. And these are the learners that are in South African school systems. Now, this is how you're going to make the bank change now, how they operate. Because of you can exclude them if you want to in this whole process, but I will tell you a little bit about it. You can contribute as little as 50 rands from each learner, and you will have 15 billion rands from these learners. Now, we're going to do that and transform our economy and invest in our kids. That's a commitment that I'm making, that I will share it with the relevant people, and we will see our human investment happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This table right in the front.
My name is Dawood Mdebele. I work with Investec. One of my responsibilities that Mr. Kosov gives me is to run around the continent to look for opportunities. And this particular comment or question is directed at the Minister of Home Affairs. One of the challenges we have when you visit places like Kenya is that South Africa is making it so difficult for a number of them to visit our country with our visa restrictions and requirements, especially for African countries, that a number of businesses that I know that were operating out of Kenya are now starting to consider Dubai as a head office. I've had people that come out from Botswana who say to me, to come to South Africa would come for the long weekend, whenever there's a long weekend, benefit from the shopping that is done here. They're no longer doing that because we're making it very difficult for them. I think as a ministry, we should consider the visa restrictions that we are imposing, especially to the number of Africans, because not only are we losing in terms of potential head offices and businesses, but I think our retail sector also suffers as a result of that. Thanks.
Did the lady want to ask a question as well? Not. Okay. Good. Minister Khadebe.
Thanks for the comments as well as the questions. On the first one, on the monitoring of the NDP, as it is well known, the ruling party in 2012 embraced and adopted the National Development Plan as a plan of government. And in order to implement the NDP, in 2014, Cabinet adopted what we call a medium-term strategic framework 2014-2019, which is the first 5-year plan to implement the NDP. So this medium-term strategic framework, the first 5-year plan, has 14 outcomes, starting from basic education, health, economy, environmental assets, social cohesion, human settlements, as well as nation building. So the president has appointed each minister to be responsible for these 14 outcomes. And the president also has signed performance agreements with all ministers, including those who are responsible for each of these 14 outcomes. So as a Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we monitor the performance of the whole of government to implement the National Development Plan. So every quarter, we make an assessment to Cabinet how far we are moving in implementing the NDP and what obstacles stand in the way and what has to be done in order to improve the performance. So at this moment in time, we're doing what we call a midterm review, which I presented on Friday to indicate the milestones that we have achieved. So this program of action, which is based on the evaluation and assessment, is actually posted on our website, where every member of South African society can be able to gauge how far we've gone. So also too, this is in pursuance of one of the goals of the NDP of ensuring that there's active citizenry, because this NDP is not just a government plan, but it's a plan for the whole people of South Africa. So I agree with you that NDP is a reality, it's not an abstract thing. We implement it every day of the week. On that political question of the ANC, that is why we're in this policy conference, because we want to build a strong ANC. That's why we're assessing our policies until tomorrow, so that we can be able to see what policies we can be able to confirm that we adopted in Mangaung in 2012. If there are any amendments to those policies, we are going to be doing so. If there are new policies altogether, that will be done. The issue of leadership, even though it's being discussed within the context of principles, but the issue of the leadership contest will only start in September. So, but there is a great consciousness amongst many members of the ANC that we need a united African National Congress, because if it flounders, the South Africa will not be a beneficiary to that. That is why even these policies that we're discussing today, even though largely is card-carrying members of the ANC, but their impact is that to whole of society. So that's why we require also your input so that you can have an impact on the policies of the ANC. On the third question, I agree with you. This is our policy, that we need to diversify the South African economy, because one of the major constraints of the South African economy is that our over-reliance on mining and not diversifying is one of the major structural impediments of the South African economy. And also just to export our minerals is not a good thing to do. So that is why the issue of minerals beneficiation is on the agenda of the ANC. So we expect that there will be strong proposals that are going to be emanating from the economic transformation of how we can be able to accelerate those issues of minerals beneficiation, which are already part of the policies of the organization. But just to add as well, that they also, to those already existing policies to support emerging businesses, including the 30% set aside, local content, localization, all those issues are in pursuance to what the colleague from Limpopo is asking. I think Minister Mkhize will respond on the issue of visas. On the issue of human resources, as you know that in this NDP, outcome number one is education. That is why education is an apex of our priorities. Of all government departments, if you put aside the social developments in terms of social grants, it has the biggest slice of our budget. So the issue of human resource development is key even to the issue of the growing economy and also job creation. States SA indicates that those with a post-school education have a better chance of getting employment than those who do not have post-school education. That is why higher education and training, in particular post-school education, is increasingly receiving a lot of money from our fiscus, because we know that if we can be able to teach our people, especially skills, we can be able to turn around this economy. That's why I want to endorse the comments that Steve made earlier on, that we should not just train people without thinking where they're going to be working. So that's why the collaboration, the partnership between government, in particular basic education, higher education and training, and the industry, including a curriculum design, must be the order of the day to ensure that our young people, be it at universities, but more particularly in TVET colleges, are trained for work and so on. I think...
A very good morning from the ANC policy briefing here at NASREC in Johannesburg, and we at the Progressive Business Forum breakfast. We've just heard from Minister Jeff Kaudere in his capacity as the head of policy for the ANC, and the minister talking primarily about the NDP and saying that this is the way forward. This is the policy that was created by the people, tabled in Parliament, and that everyone needs to be on board. Remember, this policy is aimed at eradicating poverty and eliminating inequality by 2030. And the minister saying that, you know, there are markers along the way, and this is the path that's been created, and everybody needs to be on board for this to actually take place. We're still taking a Q&A session here, but very interesting comments and questions coming up, and we'll bring you updates later throughout today. And thank you very much.
But on the orders of the railway carriages by both Transnet and PRASA, we happen to have a share in a company that makes railway carriages. There were two companies in South Africa that would make railway carriages for decades. And the one we had a share in, I don't think either of them got any contracts for the development of, for the carriages, one for PRASA, which is ordered from the Spanish, they don't even fit on the tracks, and two was for Transnet. They were ordered from North China Rail, South China Rail, and I think Bombardier. And I think there's a typical case in point is those businesses now have not got any work, and they have to retrench about 800 people. And that's where we are scoring own goals as a society. And then there are, the gentleman gave examples about the business, I think he said in Heidelberg, that can make radiators. I think there are multiple, or I can't remember exactly what word you used, but multiple situations like that where we are not being sensible as a country by using our own resources that we have on the ground that can do things and make things, and we go off and import them. And you know, obviously we've read a lot about this in the media and from these emails, and corruption has a big role to play in some of those decisions. I think that the issue that Darwood raised, Minister Mkhize, you're going to respond, but as I mentioned in what I was talking about, is one of our biggest opportunities as a society is tourism, head offices for international firms who want to do business in Africa, education tourism. I mentioned about Australia, second biggest export is education tourism. And they were historically regarded as a mining country. I mean, these are things, these are big, big opportunities for us to help grow and develop and to create jobs. So I really think that you have to look at your visa system, and I think why international firms don't want to locate here is very difficult to get their key people visas. And I think those are big challenges for our society. So I think that you really need to look at that, because it makes a big difference for a broad group of businesses, industries to have international firms locate their head office here and use South Africa as a platform for Africa, because Africa is still seen as a growth continent. And then I think probably that's all I really want to say. And I know that Minister Debbie did have a go at me about me talking about accelerated inclusive growth with transformation and jobs versus radical socio-economic transformation. I think depending on how you do it, they probably all mean the same thing. And that's why I think, you know, on the NDP, execution is key. I remember at the IMF one year, one of the previous ministers came on a platform, and I was talking about some of the issues that we have in our society, the strengths and the weaknesses. I think South Africa is always a society that has a lot of strengths, but there are also weaknesses. And he said, no, Stephen, you missed out one. We have an execution problem. That is one of our key weaknesses. Unless we start executing and stop talking, we are never going to get anywhere. We're never going to reach your 2030 goal or your 5-year goal, Minister Debbie. We have to start executing, even to implement the Youth Employment Service, which is hopefully going to create 1 million internships over a period of 3 years. It is a tall order, but we are committed to it. Just to get the incentive package and the process we have to go through. For me, a business person, I'm going dippy. I promise you. All the dialogue one has had to have with the various stakeholders can drive you to drink. This is a very important project. I've got my friend Denisa sitting here from BBC, and I'm still, the uncle gave us four pages, Denisa, of issues that were wrong with the program. Well, you know, we have to live with imperfection in life, but we need to execute. Execute, execute, execute. And that doesn't mean say kill people. It means say get things done. That's what we need as a society, is to get things done. Thank you.
You can come up here as well.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I had really wanted to come up, but the guy with the mic was sitting next to me like this. With regard to concerns about, or maybe before that, I really want to thank Minister Hadebe for a high-level presentation on the NDP. You know, much as I've been in government for quite some time, I think the presentation today sent a message clearer as to how important these partnerships are in our work, and also our TG to unpack in a simplified way key pillars of our radical transformation, transformation has been very, very helpful. With regard to Home Affairs is being repositioned. Maybe that's why I'm deployed there, because I like strategies. It's being repositioned with special emphasis on security aspects, which is really important for this country, so that our documents are issued in a secure, orderly manner. Respectability of our documents is critical in the partnerships we're talking about. If I go around with a passport, which people think, oh, South African passport sometimes are fraudulent and so on, it has got wide-ranging implications. So we're beginning to focus more on security aspects of our documents. But the notion of radical economic transformation has really compelled the department to pay special attention to facilitation of migration of skills and business opportunities, to a point where we have people posted like Foreign Affairs will do. So basically, I accept that there has been problems, but we have invested resources. We have posted people even in Europe, across Africa to pay particular attention to business permits. And also, we are looking at the students' population and ensuring that also people who want to migrate for the purpose of education and skills and to acquire skills, they don't have to wait for long period of time before their documents are finalized. So thank you very much for your consents. But given the importance of the matter, we might have to have a platform where we look at areas of concern so that we tighten. We make sure that it's something which we take it out of the way. I was in Germany last week. I got very positive feedback where we've got 2 young people placed there, posted over a period of 5 years, working mainly with business to ensure that whenever there are opportunities for them to come here, it's quicker. And I hope if there are still areas of concern in areas like Kenya, we'll have to look at that. The emphasis now is to look at partnerships also between those countries, because you might think the problem is with our officials, and it might be with the security of documents across East Africa. They take longer, even when they use biometrics to determine the status and the identity of a person. But the point is well taken. It's in line with our vision of not only protecting our borders, but using them for strategic facilitation of migration of business and skills. Thank you very much.
Possibly, Minister, we could create a workshop between business and your department on how to address this issue more productively. We're going to go for a second round now. I want to start with Mike here in the front. Hang on. I want to start with Mike and then I want to move to that side. Gino, please. Mike.
Thank you. I won't be long. My name's Mike Wiley. I'm chairman of WBHO, but I'm actually talking on behalf, I think, of the construction industry. We really do understand construction, and we understand how the NDP is going to really be ignited by spending in construction, and that's infrastructure spend. And I think all around the world, countries get out of a recession and get growth going through spending on infrastructure. So I think maybe the problem up to now is how do you spend on that infrastructure? But the construction industry has, I sort of to make this point, has had a major, what I would like to think is radical transformation over the past few years through interventions and advice from the TG and the PICC ministers led by Minister Patel, where the industry has changed completely. Most of the listed companies are now more than 51% black owned. Murray and Roberts Construction, for instance, is 100% black owned. And then those of us that haven't gone that ownership route are going to ensure that 25% of our turnover is being done by a number of black companies, and so the whole effect will be deep. So when you talk about the construction industry and infrastructure spend, it's not going to just be the companies as before that built the rest of the infrastructure in South Africa. It will go down deep into the smaller black companies. And the industry has various models, and we were hoping now that this whole competition stuff is out the way and the transformation is out the way, that we really could engage with government on the various models. These models include supporting municipal grants with public sector funding, private sector funding through Dr. Mkhize. The industry has put 1.5 billion aside. We hear the motor industry has got 3.5 billion set aside. I'm sure the banks are going to come to the party. So there is a big funding available, which we could combine with municipal grants. And by getting into the towns, and I think that's where the infrastructure needs to get spent, we can create jobs, we can train youth, we can de-skill the infrastructure to make it available for the young unemployed to do the work. and we can actually alleviate poverty, et cetera, et cetera. So the industry has a lot to offer, and if I could just ask one of the ministers, how is the best way for the construction industry to engage with government to take this further? Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Now we'll move to this side of the room. But the mic is on the way to you. But the mic is on the way to you. So I don't understand. Please keep it short and brief to the point.
Yes, I only have one question, Daryl, not
Sure.
two. My name is Gino Delfava. As I iterated to Minister Patel and TG yesterday, that my company is called Kwasi Sonke Logistics. We're one of a handful of black companies that operate within the untransformed sector of the logistics sector. But my question, I would like to say thank you to my comrade Jeff Khadebe, who in 1994 at the Black Enterprise Forum at the Carlton Center did not ask me for a company profile, but he said to me as we were walking, I want you to move my goods, and you do it. He didn't ask for a quotation, or he didn't ask for a company profile. Thank you very much, Comrade Jeff, to see you after so many years. My question to Comrade Jeff, in the Minister of the Presidency, TG, we know that we've worked on transforming the maritime sector. The Operation Pakisa, we are a stakeholder in that program, and the oceans economy. Comrade Jeff, we need that program as a presidential project to be disseminated so that the black people of the rural areas of the Eastern Cape, where I come from, may understand what Operation Pakisa and oceans economy means. Thank you.
Thank you. The lady here in the middle table. We'll come to the lady.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. Always wanted to say that. My name is Veronica Mudiling, hashtag SMME ambassador. My question is on my leadership minister, Jeff Khadebe. There is a youth chamber that reports to your directorate. And unfortunately, this youth chamber is only visible in 2 provinces. And I want to know exactly why is it visible in Mpumalanga and Free State alone. What about other provinces? Because when I was in Free State, I was a member of the youth chamber. When I got to Johannesburg, I wanted to be part of it anymore, but it's not active. My second question would be to the embassies. You guys are visible in Pretoria and Gauteng as well, and which many people don't know about what you offer, especially for SMME opportunities. How can they do business with you? What opportunities are within your countries that can help a young person who wants to do business out of South Africa? I would like to thank the Netherlands with your Orange Corners initiative. I'm part of the people that works with Orange Corner, and it's benefiting me well as an SME ambassador. It gets easy to translate opportunities to young people. And Minister, again, there is a company called Kofifi FM. Kofifi Media Group, it has taken young people that were doing drugs in Eldorado Park. Now they are cameramen, they are TV presenters and radio presenters. What can be done to support this group that has taken upon itself to develop the youth of Eldorado Park? Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
for your invitation to working with the NDP. I'm an SMME ambassador and I'm willing to come and work with you. As for the Presidential Youth Working Committee, what can I do to be part of the Presidential Youth Working Committee? Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to come to the table second from the front, yes, and then to the gentleman here who's been waiting for a while.
Thank you. My name is Ola from Deloitte. Just a few things that we've, from what Mr. Khadebe had mentioned around the NDP. I've just noted some positive things from the work that we also do in the industry. I mean, I can confirm that from what here the minister has said, 4 main things that we've seen that really show that the government is serious about NDP If you go to many of the government departments and institutions, you read their policies, the strategies, it's very clear NDP is what we are serious about. Investment in people, investment in systems and processes, and even the funding is clear, it's directed towards the things that are supposed to. Also on those issues of performance monitoring from the presidency, it happens every quarter, the results are published. It's very clear what we need to do to fix and go forward. Where we would like to participate as business is on your invitation, which is, in my view, clearly directed to where the lack is. How do we start acting on the very same issues that are there in the performance monitoring reports that says, look, this is not working, this is what needs to be done. Because that is where I think we can start moving the NDP forward. We've planned correctly, we've budgeted correctly, we've got the people, we've got the systems, we've got the policies in place, we even monitor on it. But it seems like where we need to step forward is how do we act on our own government corrective actions? How do you invite business to participate in those forums? And that's what we are excited about from what you mentioned here. Is there going to be a forum? How are we going to go in there and sit and say, look, in our views, from a global perspective, this is where this has worked to solve this problem. This is how we need to start acting and executing. So that is, if you can just give us more clarity about how do we participate and move those things forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The table here on the far right, hopefully not reflective of the thinking, but yeah, just right.
I think the thinking is more central than left or right. Thank you very much, Chairperson. The question that I wanted to pose, I guess Minister Hadebe can answer that question, Bungani. Stats SA tells us that 90% of manufacturing in South Africa is still in white hands, family owned, 500 million rand in revenue or less, and in certain instances they are technologically challenged. And in certain instances they are very uncompetitive. So they can't compete with the Chinese imports, Brazilian imports, and the Indian imports. So this is what Stats South Africa tells us. And I think generally there's consensus across stakeholders in the industrialization, localization, as well as economic development circles that there are three chief reasons why the fortunes of black people in South Africa have not changed after 22 years of democracy, or not changed to the extent that they should have. Let's put it that way. And these three reasons are in the main lack of access to finance, lack of access to markets, both public and private, and also lack of skills. And most importantly, skills in understanding the science that manufacturing is. For science, manufacturing is an international science, is an international game. And if as South Africa we are to play a significant role in that game, we need to understand the science that manufacturing is. Now with this consensus, with the stats that I alluded to earlier on that we got from Stats South Africa, what is government doing from a presidency point of view, from a national development plan point of view, to coordinate, because there are a lot of government activities that are fragmented in addressing these very challenges that we've spoken about. What is government doing to streamline the coordinated attempt to address these issues? Because in most instances, government work in different directions, different departments, different agencies, and there is no coordination. That is why the impact is not what is desired. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to recognize two more hands in this round, and then we'll look at how time's going. But the gentleman here in the middle, yes, there. And then directly after that, you go to Eric.
Thank you very much. My name is Muzigai Senkosi from a company called Ekasi IT Solutions. We specialize in software development, and our 10 key software is running at schools for e-learning. I've got two concerns, which one my colleagues have already spoken about for access to finance, especially for growth and expansion.
So we can concentrate on the second.
But now, the problem that we have as a small company is mostly local content, where government procures from international softwares, but we are a company that develops software on open source technologies in South Africa, but we don't get recognition or access to industries. But also looking at what TG was saying on risk factors, but also looking at what the construction industry is achieving right now on VRP, TG. Is it only focusing on the construction industry, or are we going to also get that recognition in other industries like ICT? Because currently we're getting a backdrop from big companies where on enterprise development, companies are only doing that to gain the BEE scorecards, not necessarily to help small companies to achieve that 25% on gross. So are we going to get monitoring and evaluation on other industries as compared to the construction industry? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last question this round.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric van Diemen. I'm 51% black shareholder of a company that makes solar geysers. We're the only black company that makes solar geysers in South Africa. Probably the second largest if you take black and white. Now, I've been a member of the PBF for 3 years, a titanium member, and I think it's a good forum. But in this 3 years, as now, I always say this, when you promise your child every Friday you're going to give them sweets, you can't get angry with them if you break that promise. Now, what's happening with, in my personal view, with the black industrialists is that I didn't say, now currently we're making 3,000 geysers to private companies, Robex, etc. Now, then there came a request, there's a black industrialist program. Now, in this 3 years, I've tried to get to a DG of DTI. I was at the Ministry of Energy, small business. I don't even want to talk about the small business ministry. In these 3 years, the best I could do was to get a conversation like this. I must talk quickly, and then it said, no, just we'll get in contact with you. That's the best I could get for 3 years. Not one decent conversation. Listen to me. I'm a black industrialist. I make solar geysers. And it seems to me like as small businesses, we are not being taken notice of. Investec, they sponsor this, sorry for this, but we also do a lot. I've invested 40,000 Rand in one of the PBF members that were going bankrupt. We didn't blow the trumpet. We're doing lots of work in Davidton, supporting lots of orphanages, doing a lot of entrepreneurial work, but we don't blow our own trumpet. But it seems like as small businesses, we are not being taken notice of. We also don't have the advertising money to say what we've done now for the people in our communities. All that I'm asking is, I didn't say there must be a black industrialist program. The government has said it there. So if you say it, take us in serious if we come. Don't make me feel like I'm a nuisance now, because I can go on my own. I'm manufacturing 3,000 geysers on my own. But don't say there's a program, and when I ask for help, it's like, you're a nuisance now. Stop coming to us. Stop bothering me. Not even a single email was given back. We acknowledge it's just being ignored, and you get no results. So the problem is, are we really serious about execution? Are we really serious about helping small businesses? Are we really serious about manufacturing in this company? Because we do manufacture. And all that I've asked for these 3 years is not a tender. I don't want a freebie. All that I wanted was, come to the factory and see what we're doing. And if you like it, support us. If you don't like it, say, your product is nonsense, we're not interested in you. And for 3 years, I'm struggling to get that, and I didn't get one response. The best I got was walking along somebody and hoping that he will take notice of me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Minister Gerebe.
Thank you once again for the comments and the questions. The first one on infrastructure, as the TG has indicated in his input this morning, we are deeply committed as a South African government to pumping more money on infrastructure, because we know what infrastructure can do in reigniting the economy, especially around the sectors of transport, energy, ICT. We're going to be continuing pumping those trillions of rands into infrastructure. The issue going forward, because you ask advice as to what is going to be happening going to the future, there is a policy stance at the moment where we want to focus more on maintenance, especially at a local government level, because we have realized that many spheres of government do not budget appropriately for maintenance. So if we do not budget for recurrent expenditure, it creates a problem in the long term where we're going to be losing the infrastructure that has been built. If you take local government only, there is assets worth about 1.26 trillion rand that are at stake of being lost forever if we do not move swiftly on the issues around maintenance. So my advice, therefore, look at the space of maintenance going to the future. Also, too, don't only look at South African infrastructure. We have also a lot of initiatives in Africa. There is an initiative that was started by the heads of states a few years ago called Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Initiative, Championing Initiative, PICI, where our president has been made a champion of that, in particular the North-South corridor. So I will advise South African companies to look at that space. We are working very closely with the Development Bank of Southern Africa and the Boston Consulting Group in order to ensure that many of these projects must be taken towards bankability. So even the banking institutions are advised to look at that space. On the second question, just to correct the gentleman from the Eastern Cape. What we did in 1994 when I was in Public Works, we started what we called a 10-point plan, where there was a huge outcry by black construction practitioners that they were not getting tenders from government. So what we did, we started a program which we called the Black Contractor Development Program, where we were putting down into smaller chunks these big projects so that emerging black contractors can be able to participate. We had a very successful initiative, especially with the building of prisons in Mamelsbury in the Western Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, amongst others. So I thought I needed to clarify so that you don't get the impression that the gentleman just gave the work. So there were procedures that were followed, but it was a dedicated program in order to ensure that we support emerging black contractors. Oceans economy, this is one of the areas that we want to see many people participating in. So how did this come about? The president, on his visit to Malaysia, got to understand that the Malaysian government was using what we called a big fast results methodology, of which the Operation Pakisa is derived from, where we were able to identify a sector or an issue, and we bring all relevant stakeholders in order to go into a laboratory where people stay for about 4 to 6 weeks to analyze the problem and come up with a solution. We did that with the oceans economy in 2014 for about 6 weeks in Durban at a laboratory. where all government departments that play a role in the oceans economy, the private sector, academic institutions, to deal with this issue of the oceans economy. I'm happy to indicate that we are seeing results. Already about 7.5 billion rand of investment, both from the private and the public sector, has been dedicated to the oceans economy, on aquaculture, on boat building, amongst others, creating about 6,900 jobs thus far. So, Eastern Cape also, the University of Nelson Mandela there is one hub, academic institution that is dedicated to teaching our youngsters on many issues and skills that will be of importance to the oceans economy. On the issue of youth, yes, the president is responsible for youth development. That responsibility I delegated to Deputy Minister Buti Manamela, so I would advise that young lady to contact Buti Manamela. I will give you his contacts, but more particularly as well the National Youth Development Agency. The President and Parliament recently appointed the new board of the National Youth Development Agency. I can confirm what you've just said, because I've been doing some imbizos in many communities, and I've discovered that there is a lot of complaint that the National Youth Development Agency seems to be located mainly in urban areas. In many rural areas, in even our townships, the information about the NYDA is not adequate amongst young people. So, young lady, including Kofifi Media, thanks for the good work you are doing, because the drugs are killing our youngsters. The smoking of nyaupe, wonga, teak. Sometime last year I went to a police station outside Temba Township in Pretoria. I was so devastated to see youngsters, 14 years, 15 years. When you look at them, you can see that they're totally finished because of this wonga. So those initiatives will go a long way in bringing our youth away from crime and criminality to do useful work. Business opportunities. I think it's the responsibility and duty of business to see where there is a gap you need to move in. I can only encourage you to read more and more of our program of action that we paste on our website, and to see where the challenges are, where you can be able to come in. I can only encourage you to do so. Yes, it is true the States SA has indicated the figures that have highlighted 90%, but there are programs of DTI, Black Industrialist Program. As a Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we are also consciously aware of these issues of challenges that face especially black people, lack of access to finance, to markets, amongst others, and skills. One of the priorities that we have set ourselves going forward as DPME is to monitor very closely the performance of development finance institutions in these areas, so that we can see, so that we can force them to do more in order to ensure that those loans are also dedicated to supporting emerging black businesses around our country. On the issue of local content, I've already responded to this issue in the first round when we're discussing that we are committed as a government to supporting local content. The last one, I'm so sad of the last comment. I can only say to you, if you can give me your numbers, we'll try to assist you so that those underperforming departments should be brought into order. It is not acceptable that you knock on doors without getting a reply, because it is our responsibility as a government to support emerging businesses, especially in this area where we want to see a lot of renewable energy, so that we cannot always rely on ESCOM. So all those issues of alternative energy that we're highlighting, such as solar energy, are very key in our policy stance of energy mix. So I can only encourage you. I will not walk with you, but I can come by you, can give me your card, I can take it forward so that we can be able to assist you. So you're very passionate about how you described it. But on the other areas of PBF, I'm sure Darrell or the TG will be able to respond to that one. So I think at this juncture, I'm sure Darrell will allow me, because I also have other responsibility in the policy conference as the head of policy, so also duty calls. Thanks.
Just before you go, Minister, just allow us to thank you very much for the time that you've made available for us this morning. We really appreciate it. Whoopsie. Just before we get TG to respond, Sis Thandi, if you can, Sis Thandi, I want to just make a short comment on some more information on the VRP.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. As already stated, I've been intimately involved with the VRP, and when the question was asked, both by the gentleman who was speaking to the Black Industries Program and the Giza manufacturer, I just thought I should make this input. From the perspective of black business, we have always maintained that this program must include all the business people across the value chain. So if you look at what we've put forward, Mike will attest to this, we will be looking at working not just with contractors. We will be looking at working with material suppliers, black companies, manufacturers, and everybody else, lawyers, in terms of conveyancing on some of the housing projects that we'll be doing. So it's really an across the value chain beneficiation. What I will advise you to do, however, it's very difficult for you to have a voice when you are alone. At Black Business Council, we've got chambers, and ICT and the manufacturers are in special chambers. So if you're small and you cannot afford the fee, we do have chambers within the Black Business Council that can assist you in terms of your very important projects. Giza manufacturing, solar gizas, we use them every day on our projects, and I don't see any reason why you can't be supported. Finally, Daryl, I must say this. TG, I heard you, lots of speakers, including the minister, refer to designated groups, local content. We are forgetting a very important constituency, the women. I see these days, youth, we kind of mention them. In this room only, maybe you have 20% representation of women in business. I really stand here to say, let's continuously remind ourselves that if we leave the women out, we are leaving 50% of our population out of business. Thank you.
Sis Thandi, we invited all the women to be with us. Treasurer General, if you could just wrap up the morning for us.
Thank you very much, Daryl. I want to start by thanking the Minister for his input, and I'm sure all of us will agree that it was quite enlightening and it has opened up space for a lot of engagement. And so from the point of view of what these business breakfasts were meant to do, it has been possible to share the views to the extent that we are at least able to follow what is going on in government insofar as this very important topic, this whole important matter of the NDP is concerned. Now, just a few responses which I need to deal with. Let me start with the gentleman who does the gizas. You have got the attention of Minister Jeff Hadebe. I wish TV should have caught that one on camera just to be sure that the response has just come up immediately. You see, now, second, you know, in my language, isiZulu, we say, ingane ngakhali ifele mbelekweni. I can't translate that, but basically it says, you keep quiet, nobody will look after you. Okay, that's what it means. Now, secondly, for your information, you are going to bring your card to Daryl. Tomorrow morning, we'll have a meeting with you with the DG of DTI, Mr. Leonard October, to deal with that issue. Thirdly, before you go, meet with Tandi, Dr. Tandi Ndlovu. This is a dislocated medical practitioner who was veered into something that's completely non-clinical. She will link you up with the Black Business Council, because what is difficult is to deal with individuals. That is a big challenge. Now, you will raise a point about yourself, only to find that it's easier if we deal with it if it's all organized through an organization, and this is why we work with Black Business Council. And as a matter of interest, Black Business Council, you see the president is gone, the secretary is gone, a number of, they are in commissions. Because we don't want this idea of people feeling you are out there, nobody listens to you. This African National Congress is for everybody. Go in there and make your input. A lot of the input that's come out here is going into that process as well. And I'm just saying, therefore, that there's a way forward. Don't feel frustrated alone. Talk to others, because that's how we're going to be able to link up. I want to say that thank you very much, Tandi, for clarifying that whole value chain in this whole program of the VRP. And thanks to Mike Wiley, a few times he used to get frustrated, and I would tell him that, this is the easier part of the struggle, because it's going to benefit them as well. The point at the end of it is that we must move on. This was just to create an example of what we can do if we continue to negotiate amongst ourselves, that together we can solve the problems of the country. In this case, the question was raised by someone, well, construction sector, what about other sectors? Where are they? They must come forward, let's talk. Come to us, let's discuss. Right now, we're busy with the financial services sector. That we want to get that conversation going, simply because it's helpful in facilitating the approach to financing and the financial exclusion, which is the biggest problem. Now, we'll have to talk about the others. We're engaged with the mining sector. Let's say that that process is still pretty difficult, but we have to go into that. There are a few others that we're going to follow. So if you want us to deal with the ICT issues, we were going to come to that point, but let's talk. It's easier when you get to deal with a group, organized group, and then you can take the matter forward, because managing these issues require people who are going to sit down and say, here are the issues, here are the players. If we know who are the stakeholders and what are the issues, it's easy to pull everyone together. There's the kind of coordination that we'll need. So we will deal with all the sectors with time, but they can also start. They don't have to wait until we are there. So let's see what we can do. A point was raised by someone earlier. Yeah, he knows it's not an elective conference of the ANC, but he will ask the question nevertheless about the elections of the ANC. That's activism at its best, but it's a very valid point. People don't realize that the concern about the unity of the ANC is not just the concern of the ANC members. It's a concern of South Africans, because if the ANC does not ensure it's united, it's going to destabilize the country. It's important that the ANC must be united, and it's important that we must manage our issues properly. Now, right now, people are saying, is there division in this conference? This conference is going on very well. There's a lot of debate, and there'll be a few people who will get very emotional and start pointing at each other. That's good, because people are being honest and genuine. They are honest views that they're expressing. So we'll now and again have to step in and say, hey, no, calm down, comrades, no, you are out of order, you sit down, you apologize, and so on. That's how we've always managed the organization. People sometimes see stuff getting out into the public and they think that, oh, look at what's happening. They don't understand that managing the organization is what you have to do every day to reconcile the views, the differing views of various individuals who honestly want to provide a solution themselves. And once you've got everyone pulled together, you can get a formula that helps us to move forward. So this discussion of the policy conference is about helping the ANC policy approach. Whoever gets elected must implement this policy. The rest of the ANC structures are going to be saying, this is what we gave you as a mandate, you shall stick to that, and that's it. So the focus this time around on the economy is not because the matter was popular in the media. No, it was popular in the media because it was being discussed inside the ANC, seriously so. It was discussed inside the ANC because it is worrying our people. It was worrying our people because after 23 years, poverty still remains an issue, unemployment is rising, and inequality is high, and we must find a solution. And that's what the ANC is all here about. And so the point, therefore, is that we're just making one more platform available for us to be able to share those views and move on. The point that has been made is around education and skills. You see, to change this economy and to create more small and medium businesses, you need proper skills that will produce the services and the goods that are relevant to the economy. That's why skills are important, education is important, experience is important, and that is what we are now saying, that there are lots of people who must be supported to use their creativity to be part of this whole program of black industrialists. So when we talk about the various sectors, I've been listening here on a number of things. There's a lot of creativity that comes into the economy. And as we talk about this fourth industrial revolution, the robotics, the digital economy, you've got a lot of stuff that's going to come from the kids who are in school now that we never knew about, that we never thought would ever happen, and they'll go out there. If you take the stories of some of the big brands now, Amazon and others, it's some youngster who sits there, gets crazy, thinks about something that nobody has heard of, and then they make it happen. This is what South African kids are capable of doing, and we need to open up that space. And so the point which we want to make in this discussion is that it's going to be our task together. 2 weeks ago, I went to address something called South African University Students, something SAUS. These were the SRCs in the whole country. Their main issue was decolonization of our education. And I asked them a question, what is decolonization? Have we got a consensus of what it is? In the discussion, it becomes clear that you cannot have a South African education system that produces unemployed and unemployable graduates. In the first instance, when we trained them, where did we think they were going to be employed? Now, who told us that they demand those kinds of degrees that we have now made people to go and do? The problem of discoordination between industry and tertiary institutions and government is a challenge that needs to be attended to. For people to be able to know you get onto this particular cause so that you can ultimately make a contribution in that particular sector because there are jobs there. So that coordination is important. It brings us all together. It's a very, very important issue. And I think that we need to be able to bring business closer to tertiary institutions. Knowledge is where the wealth gets generated from. It's new knowledge, it's more research, it's more new solutions, it's innovation. We must focus in that direction because that is where we're going to be able to compete with the rest of the world. And in competing with the rest of the world, somebody gave us an example that In the US, the jobs, 50% of the jobs today come from companies that didn't exist more than 10 years ago. It's going to be the same here in South Africa. In another 15 years' time, some of the jobs that we have today won't probably be existing. You know, when we talk to the kids and tell them that there was once upon a time when the telephone had a long cord and you couldn't move from the lounge with the telephone to the yard, they look at you and say, what was wrong with you? The point being that the advancement in technology is so much that our kids can't recognize something that happened 15 years ago. I mean, at some point, somebody was showing on social media, they sent us a number of things there. You see the cassettes with the tape that gets tangled and you must roll it out with a pen and so on. They go, what was this for? They don't have a sense of what we're talking about. But when that happened, we thought we were most advanced. You know, when you show the kids, this was what was a radio during those days. I said, radio? I mean, they listen to everything through their, what do you call this thing, yeah? So, and that's what happened, you know. And I was making a joke yesterday, but it is true, that my kid, my granddaughter, Nini, is 2 years old. When I walk into, Mkulu, can I borrow your phone? She wants to work on my phone, and she can do it without my assistant. No, Mkulu, I can do it. That's the problem. That's how far they're gone. And his brother who's 4 years old say, Gogo, your datas are finished. The datas are finished because she now understands this better now. It took me a long time to know what is a data. You know? Now, you have a completely different world that is coming up. And the problem of us not being able to fix our education takes me back again to the same thing that I see with my children. My grandchild is 5 years old. That's a different one. He talks to me about volcanoes and lava because he gets it from school. He can count to 100 with the assistance of the sister, but beyond, he can go beyond 200, if he's assisted. I got to school when I was 7 years old and we didn't have a birth certificate. You had to put your hand over the hand like that to show that you are old enough to go to school. You are now 7 years. And it's actually quite correct. You can't touch your ear unless you're 7 years old. It's true. Now, you tell me the child who's sitting out there and has got no access to Gogo's phone to do the thing and find out about data that are finished and get them to count up to 100 by the age of 4, and tell me what they will be doing when those kids are going to be meeting at the same class. And tell me, what are we going to be doing? So you think we're going to deal with unemployment and we don't fix this education? Where are we going to get this to be? How are we going to get this to be solved? Now, if there's no alignment between industry, education, educational institution, and government, we will have a problem. So part of radical economic transformation means sort that problem out, because you can solve a lot of things with the people who are here, you're professionals and so on, but a lot of you, particularly I'm talking about the black ones, a lot of you were probably just the first graduate in your own village. The others didn't even get to standard 6 and they didn't think there was anything wrong with it. The problem now is the time is changing and we have to catch up fast. I'm glad also that my colleagues, the ministers, were here. Some of the concerns that are coming up, the whole continent is yearning to grow. Now, nobody's going to come and ask for permission from South Africa to say, may we please grow? They are going to grow and outcompete us in the market. If South Africans don't get their act together, forget it. And the point about it is that don't think that when the ANC talks about radical economic transformation, there are radicals there trying to destroy the country. It is not so. It is a genuine call by South Africans who want to live their lives and get themselves into jobs and get a kind of sustainable lives and create communities that they can be proud of. What you want for your children is what everybody wants for their children. If we don't all participate together, doesn't matter what you're going to say for the 3 generations of your own children. If my children don't have access to the same kind of wealth, well, they're going to find a way to get to it. And it won't be an orderly process. It's going to be an unstable process where our democracy is threatened. We don't need to go that route. We can sit here and talk and make things happen. Sometimes we misunderstand each other because we're saying different things. We must just always remember we're all trying to fix the same country. But we'll obviously have different views because we come from different areas and our aspirations are different and our experiences are different. But those who are in the control of the major resources in the country, those who create and manage the wealth of the country, you must know that you have got the blessings that are meant for the rest of the population. That wealth needs us to find a different way of how it can help everyone else to grow. This country must grow. So we need growth, we must get jobs, and this economy must transform. And this discussion we're having is about that process of transformation, but you also have your own ideas as to what can happen. Those are the ideas that you say, go and start implementing them. Now, this gentleman that I said must stand up, we had happened to work together many years ago in our lives when they were constructing the King Shaka International Airport, and we were on the other side. I was working in government as the MEC. We had a task. Once a month, they would come and sit here and tell us how many jobs they'd created and how much empowerment is going to the black companies, the black suppliers. And we put a target, and we said, this is the target. Some of those construction companies decided that we're being crazy. They took us to court. I like the judge who gave a ruling. He said to them, well, the targets for the government for empowerment are very high. We agree with you. But they've put them out there for you to see. Now, you don't like the conditions, don't take the job. And case dismissed. That's how it was thrown out. Those who cooperated suddenly have today a kind of seed with which they could actually face helping the rest of the construction sector. I don't know if he didn't go through this experience, he would have been able to assist in getting the others to understand that this construction sector has to transform. It is not perfect, because if we sit with my other comrades in the BBC, they'll tell you that they don't like this, that, and the other. It's true. But I agree again with Steve Kosef. He was saying that there will be imperfections, but let's get things done and let's get to move on. In isiZulu we say, umkhonto wegwalo uphelele etsheni. So if you are a coward, you'll keep trying to sharpen your spear until it is finished before you go to battle. Let's start transformation. Even if we don't agree with the terminology, we'll find our way as we move on. Let us move on and transform this economy, and that is the way we must do it. And we mustn't go around thinking that it will ultimately, when everybody has agreed. No, those who can see the way forward, let's move on. The others will find us on the way. Today, you can't find enough people who've supported apartheid. But there were people who were wanting to go in and live in the caves and put all the food in the monkeys because they thought South Africa was going to explode. Others just didn't believe that they would still be living in a South Africa with a black government. It took a while for people to understand change. But those who understand it must move. Don't wait. Don't wait for the last. The first few must show the way, lead the way, and then the rest will see the example and move on. South Africa is too precious for us to sit down and start pointing fingers. It's easy to be negative and point fingers. Yeah, government is this, Zuma is that, so-and-so is that. Okay, maybe they are. What about you? Let's transform this country. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the TV stations, the media, for all the support. You have really been beautiful. Thank you very much. Please just give them a round of applause. And thank you to all the sponsors who have been here. This is our last show. So thank you very much to all the white monopoly capital who... Thank you very much. And to all the business people who have been here, the ministers who have been here, the ambassadors, please give yourself a round of applause. Thank you very much. I'm sure all of you would like to be part of that conference. Next time, once you get your membership card, we'll welcome you into that conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McKeezy. And lastly, we'd just like to ask Stephen if he would just come and make the closing remarks and the vote of thanks, and then we'll release you. Stephen?
Again, a lot has been said today, and as the TG said, sometimes we don't agree with the language, but we agree with where we have to go in life, and let's get moving. So again, thank you to the Progressive Business Forum for hosting this breakfast. Thank you to all the ministers that graced us with their presence, and to Minister Adebi for giving us some update on the NDP. Again, to the TG for trying to drive the bus forward and ensuring that we all get on the same road. I think we all agree with where we got to go. It's just a question of how we get there, and let's start moving. And then thank you to all of you who've attended and have made a contribution to this forum, including my friend who makes the geezers. And I've already got your card, so we'll see who's faster, business or government. Okay. So again, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Mr. TG, please come out with very good policies. Let's implement the NDP. Let's make sure that South Africa gets growing. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.